Welcome to Part 7, the final part of Data Visualization 2. I'm Ryan Womack, Data Librarian at Rutgers University Libraries, and let's jump in. So this segment is about how to run your own Shiny server, and getting these up and running is a little bit detailed. It's not really something I can walk through in a video, but I've compiled links and I will discuss issues that you may face as you try something like this. And as typical in my videos, one of my messages is, if I can do it, so can you. This does require some comfort with Linux command line type operations, remote logins and things like that. But if you have done that in any sort of other context, I believe you too can set up a Shiny server. So a little bit of background on just the software first. I'm going to conduct this segment by just opening up a bunch of windows and talking through them. So Shiny, under the Deploy tab, you'll find this information. We've already talked about Shiny apps. We've talked about the possibility of if you had a locally hosted, institutionally hosted instance, you might have a way of pushing things directly to that. But in terms of the server products, there are currently two products. There used to be something called Shiny Server Pro that no longer exists. It has been replaced by POSIT Connect. And again, POSIT's goal is to integrate various technologies. So this product does that for R, Python, Shiny, and other tools that work from RStudio. But they still have the open source Shiny server, which allows you to serve up Shiny apps if you have a web server. So again, there's information on the Python side about similar things. The Python approach, this is, I think, one of the goals behind Shiny Live, is to provide something that works a little more slickly with Python, and also to push people to the POSIT Connect option as well. But my approach is all about open source, both low cost and open, meaning that you're in control of what is being run, and you're not at the mercy of oh, the license went up, I can't afford to actually operate the projects that I intended to, because I am at the mercy of an external force. Of course, open source software requires a community of volunteers to continue, but because it's open, at least what you currently have, you can hang on to. So you can download the Shiny server from the POSIT site, and basically get it from here. The instructions that I'm going to share with you are scattered around the web in different places. So what you need is a web server. Now, you could do this locally on a physical machine that you have control of that connects to the internet. But what I chose to do was to have a remote server. I chose a DigitalOcean droplet, and so I'm going to open up tabs for this section 7.1, and we'll kind of walk through those as we go along. I used to use AWS for a lot of things. My feeling about AWS, you can discover a blog post on my website, is that AWS has become tremendously complicated with many technologies, many possibilities. The screen is comes up with a big blank opening. AWS has become very complicated. I had a particular incident with them where my websites were taken offline completely for something seemingly very trivial, and my blog post explains my issues with that. But it's almost a full-time job just to keep up with what AWS is doing. Pricing-wise, still remains inexpensive, but I said, let me move to products that are more designed for usability than for maximum technology details. The other issue with AWS, this idea of the different roles that you need to set up in order to log in, and I understand the goal of that, but it's really overkill for an individual one person setting up a project. If you're comfortable with AWS, though, obviously you could use that. But DigitalOcean offers is one of the places, not exclusively, but one of the places that offers to me a simpler approach, a more supported approach, and so their products include. There are many. They also have many products, frankly speaking, but their leading products have remained simple and have not become over complexified in the AWS sense. So you can actually get free static site hosting for limited use cases from DigitalOcean, but DigitalOcean has what they call droplets, right? So a droplet is their word for a self-contained virtual machine. You can set up a droplet. They also have GPU droplets if that kind of computation is needed for you, but you choose a droplet. You can install your operating system on the droplet. Then you have a place to connect to. You can either connect to it via logging into the DigitalOcean site or SSHing directly to the site. And the minimum cost is $4 a month. You can run a Shiny server for $4 a month. I ended up upgrading to a little bit more memory on mine. I'm currently paying $7 a month for the droplet because I discovered that I was adding a lot of R packages. I was a little bit worried about running out of storage space. And essentially, you will follow instructions something like this that I've linked to. Set up an Ubuntu server on a DigitalOcean droplet, right? So you log in, you create your account, you select a droplet that you would like. This is really a very straightforward walkthrough of the process. And you can choose your operating system. Now, I'm a Debian user, but there are different flavors of Linux that you can use. You select your plan, and you can always downgrade your plan later, except that if you upgrade you can downgrade your RAM, but if you upgrade your hard drive, you basically are committing to keeping that unless you destroy the droplet and recreate something else, right? So the droplets are actually pretty flexible, right? Once it's up and running, you can keep it up and running and make modifications without having to nuke the thing and restart. You can also, it's not as many options as AWS. Obviously, AWS lets you set up your data storage in places all over the world, but you can get, for example, European data center protection with DigitalOcean, which I think is just in general a good idea, since we don't have laws protecting users in the United States to that extent about data privacy that Europe has. And essentially you can follow the default options here. The one thing I would follow their advice and recommend connecting with SSH keys. This is not a tutorial about SSH or key systems. However, the tutorial, the walkthrough that they provide is also easy to follow and works. But having your key means you don't have to type your password. If you're on your authenticated computer, you can just SSH all the time directly into your droplet. It makes administration very convenient, and a few extra steps at the beginning of setup will save you a lot of time and hassle in the long run. So I've provided some links in section 7.12 about that, which I found useful as I was setting this up. So I'm going to just kind of briefly comment on those. The instructions on how to connect to your droplet. Right, as I said, you can log in to the DigitalOcean site and click on your droplet and actually click and open up an immediate terminal window via the website. That's fine. That's good for quick operations. You can just quickly click to log in and do what you like. But once you have this key authentication, you can simply at the command line SSH with the single command into your droplet. So they call it the recovery console, is the web access, right? So in order to permit password authentication, that's turned off by default, which is a security thing. You can turn it on via the instructions on this page, the one that says I lost my SSH key. So you can turn on password authentication and then follow the steps to recreate an SSH key. The troubleshooting, I think I'll talk about the troubleshooting link last in just a second. But this page, how do I permanently add an identity for SSH, is not DigitalOcean instructions. It's actually just generic Linux instructions. There are any number of places you could use to get this information. I just happened to stumble across this link, which I realize is not the freshest, but this is a technology that just hasn't changed. It's just a basic low-level Linux thing. So you're basically managing your SSH keys in a local directory. You provide the token to DigitalOcean so that you can log in. And there's a troubleshooting page that, if things are not working, kind of walks you through any issues you might encounter. Mostly the defaults are going to work, but sometimes there are issues like this one. This is a specific one that if you generate a key and you don't allow access to the right users, it might be inaccessible, so you set your permissions a certain way. This is what I mean when I say, you should be somewhat familiar with working in a Linux environment where these concepts shouldn't be surprising to you. If you're not familiar with the Linux environment, this is a benefit of that, of being able to do such things. So if you have provided your key to your droplet, you'll then be able, all of these seemingly complicated instructions are a one-time setup thing. After you've done that, you don't have to worry about that again. Now the droplet is, as configured, is a bare bones Linux installation. So you're going to need to install anything else that you need to run the Shiny server. And primarily that's a web server. You need a web server. If you like Apache, you can use Apache. I used Nginx. I'm never sure how to pronounce that. I should just probably go listen to a video and learn, but I'm going to say Nginx. If that's incorrect, someone in the comments can let me know. So Nginx, and again, I'm going to open up some tabs and talk about what you might want to do. The steps for Apache would be very similar. And there may be other web servers out there that people like to experiment with, but those are the two leading ones. I'm using the instructions for installing on Ubuntu. Ubuntu is Debian based. The instructions for Debian are essentially the same thing. So you'll be on the command line logged into your droplet, and you'll simply run apt install nginx or yum or whatever installation technology your Linux distro uses. You would use that, but simply grab it. And DigitalOcean, the droplets are connected, right? And they're connected to nice, quick, cached repositories of things, right? Because they're closer to the backbone of the internet than you are. So any installations and updates happen very quickly on a droplet. So we install, then we work with the firewall. The firewall is, you'll probably want to allow everything open just at the beginning when you are configuring, because what we eventually want to do is have an HTTPS only traffic, and the Shiny server itself operates on a different port, so you have to map that port over, and I'll talk about those issues, right? But your UFW, the Universal Firewall application, is also very straightforward. We simply say UFW allow, and we can allow various things, right? So the instructions here tell you how to open up services. When you say UFW status, you can see the current services that are permitted, and these are all sudo, or if you're simply logging in as root, you'll be able to do these operations without the sudo command, but you do have to have root permission. You do these things, and then you can check how your nginx server is running with system control status nginx. And you can actually, if your IP address is mapped to the internet, you can start testing things like, does your actual location work? And you'll see a default page, welcome to nginx setup. Actually, if you notice the way that this page looks, you'll see that my own homepage is a very thinly, lightly edited version of that default welcome page. Sometimes you might need to stop and start or restart your server. So the system control commands are straightforward for that. You say system control verb, stop, start, or reload, restart, and then the service nginx, and it will redo itself. So the rest of this I won't talk about, because you're not going to specifically need this for the Shiny server. But there are some other configuration issues you might encounter later. So if you're familiar with Linux configuration, you'll see the configuration files are put in the etc directory, etc nginx conf, the main file. And it also uses a structure of sites enabled and sites available, where we can put specific information about sites, components of our structure of websites that are being served from a particular server. But okay, I should not go further into that. There's a link here for the UFW, Universal Firewall commands. This is a bit repetitive to what I just talked about, but there's a few more options here where we can specifically use the firewall to block problematic IP addresses or things like that. So you have that information. Okay, so at this point in our walkthrough, we have gotten a droplet. We've put a Linux system on the droplet. We have put Nginx as our web server on the Linux system on the droplet. But in order to have a secure connection, an HTTPS connection, we have to have an SSL certificate. So this is something that in the past, for light use, would be something that a few years ago to say, oh, don't bother with that. But the fact is that, like most modern browsers, are going to scream and complain and block your connections if you try to connect to an unencrypted site. And it has become easier to get a certificate, so you might as well, as part of the setup, get your SSL certificate so that you can run an HTTPS connection. And so those instructions are on this page. How do I install from DigitalOcean? And again, it's pretty straightforward walkthrough, right? You just click on the tutorial here, how to secure Nginx. It will involve you logging in, installing the certbot, which is the program that manages requesting and renewing your certificates, and it uses snap rather than a different install method. So you have to install snap first and then install certbot. You're going to want to update your software on your droplet periodically. The certbot is one where the certificate needs to be renewed every 3 months. So part of that may involve keeping the certbot software up to date. That's just a little caution. So we check our configuration file to make sure that the site that we're interested in setting up a certificate for is listed in the directory of sites available, with an entry that looks like, I don't know if this highlighting is very visible on your screen, but when I'm currently highlighting the server name example.com line, and then once that's done, we reload Nginx. We have to allow HTTPS traffic, so you make sure that that's open on your system by checking this firewall status, UFW status, and activating it if needed by saying allow, UFW allow Nginx full. And then there's a simple one-line command to request the certificate, right? So we request the certificate for our domain or variants of the domain, like www, and you'll get some verification, right? This requires your server to be active, discoverable on the internet, right? The certbot takes the information, goes out on the internet, looks for your site, and checks whether there's actually some technicalities here of how the certbot, there are 3 different ways that the certbot can check that it's you, that you have actual control of your domain. That's typically by putting like a little file in your web server that the remote bot then looks for. It says, oh, that matches. I can see that this person owns the site, and then assigning a certificate. The automated method generally works, but again, that's a little caution in case you encounter some other issues. You may need to know about those methods, right? So you can also set up an automated renewal process and check whether that's running. Otherwise, you'll get a notification. If the auto renew fails, you will get a notification a little bit before 3 months are up that your certificate is about to run out. And to fix it, you go in and say certbot renew. Hopefully that works. Again, like, little things can go wrong. I had an issue where it seemed like things were going wrong, but updating the certbot program fixed my issues. So keep everything up to date. Run your renewals when it's suggested. Do what the computer tells you to do. Right? This is one of the lessons of working with computers. If you do have issues, right, then you start doing your start page searches for these types of issues. Okay, so that's the HTTPS part. Now we would have a working web server that can secure traffic, but we don't have Shiny on it yet. So Shiny is installed via these instructions. There's instructions on how to set up a Shiny server. Talks about all the prerequisites, which we have basically already covered. Shiny we simply pull from the repository via one command line command and install it with R. So instructions are here. These do not need to be edited or modified for your setup. You can just run that command, and then it'll tell you that Shiny is done and has been pulled in. We then, I'm sorry. So this step one is installing Shiny itself, not the Shiny server, right? So that's just like what we would do with any R package. We could also boot up R on our remote system and install packages that way, right? So once you have some piece of R on your droplet, then you'll be probably adding many packages over time, because you're going to need those same packages to run things on your Shiny server as you would in a local R session. Okay, but we can pull them right from repositories with this command. We retrieve the Shiny server package. Here's a Debian package with the wget command. We probably, to be safe, again, if you're setting something up for the long term, be careful and follow these steps. Do a checksum, right? The checksums are listed on the website, right? When I say checksum, you know what I'm talking about. The checksum is, where is it listed? It's RPM. Here it is. This little block that says SHA. SHA 256 is the code that should match what you get when you run the SHA command on your downloaded package bundle. So make sure the file hasn't been corrupted. Do that step. You will need this GDebi core. That's another extra piece, so just install that, and then install Shiny server with the GDebi command. I think this is an Ubuntu thing. I mean, I don't think you're going to run into big issues if you were installing this via your typical method for your distro. Let me just say it that way. I think it's because it's a Debian package and you're running it on Ubuntu that you need this step. You'll install, and then you can check whether things are running with this command ss. And looking for something that Shiny is operating. So this is the port 3838 that by default Shiny operates on, right? So when I mentioned earlier this mapping that we'll have to do, that's coming. So we see that there's something listening on port 3838 once Shiny is installed. And we're going to need to temporarily open up access to that port from the web, right? So here we UFW allow 3838. Now if we visit the port, and if I say shiny brianwomack.com 3838 colon 3838, I think I'm going to get blocked right now. Right? It's going to load and say it failed because my server's already configured. But in order to test it, you're going to want to leave that port open right at the beginning. So allow that. And then this step 3, this is the sort of, I would call this the tricky step in the process, but it's a one-time thing. You're going to need to map, right? See, my 3838 is closed. It has been mapped to the 443 port, the HTTPS port. You can also see my certificate here from Let's Encrypt that validates the site. But in order to get to that point, we have to walk through these steps. So we have to go into the ngingsconf file, and we have to insert this chunk of text that maps proxy settings for RStudio, drop it into the ngingsconf file as the instructions state here. Then we go into the sites available portion of the configuration for our site. So you have to have this set up for your site. And you drop in this location block of code into that file. And this block requires you to provide your own server IP, right? So DigitalOcean will tell you, or your other, whatever service you're using, will tell you what's the actual IP address of your service. And if you're running it on your local physical machine that you have control over, you probably already know what this is. So type in the numbers of your IP address, and in these two places where it says your server IP, and then put that edited version of this chunk into the example.com file. And they explain the meaning of those things, but I didn't bother to make any changes to that. Then we test the nginx install, hoping there are no errors. If there are errors, then you go out, start searching the internet for tips, and we unlink the default nginx welcome page, right? So the default welcome page is sitting in the web server directory, and what we also need to do, this is the part that maps the port, but we also need to make sure we have the right content being served up. So we unlink the default web page, we restart nginx, and you should see something when you load it. You should see the default Shiny page, which also resembles something like this. I should probably find an example of the default Shiny login before any changes have been made, but I won't do that now in the interest of time. So once you've run these steps, you should see your server serving up the Shiny default welcome page when you visit it. once we've done that, then we turn off the 3838 port by deleting those entries, doing this UFW status numbered, UFW delete, until we've removed all those. And now we should be back to a situation where we visit the website, get redirected to the SSL certificate secure port 443, but the content served on 443 is coming from the Shiny server. It's been remapped from 3838. So that is the process of like getting your working Shiny server going. If you've gotten that far, you're really basically there. Now you're in control of your Shiny server, and I'll talk just a bit about, okay, how do you put stuff on the Shiny server? We haven't actually talked about that, but I've given you on my webpage the directories that are significant, right? So the default Nginx HTML directory is var www html. If you want to keep using material there or any non-Shiny material, you can put things in that directory and then just link to Shiny things from it. The links on 7.14 also contain the full Shiny server documentation from POSIT. It actually refers to the no longer available Shiny Server Professional, but basically these things are still apply to the open version of Shiny Server. Things like user authentication and stuff, apparently also are possible. I have not experimented with that, nor am I qualified to talk about it, but the documentation is there. So we've gotten to this point. We've got a working Shiny server. Now you can just rely on that, and you can upload any Shiny projects to the directories listed in 7.15. So the Shiny web pages serve up from the directory serve srv/Shiny server/ and then you can put a project. Now, if you remember our previous sections, right, we had Ryan data.shinyapps.io/btaa. We were looking at that /btaa is the directory. In that directory sits either our app.r file or our 2-file version ui.r and server.r, and any supplemental files that you might need to refer to. Like if you have images, logos or something you want to display, a data file that is not built in, that needs to be loaded, that stuff all needs to sit in the directory. And there is no special process, unlike the publish button in RStudio, which does its own little thing of bundling the files and pushing them. You simply copy what's in your directory. The directory that on your local system you're testing in RStudio, you have a directory where that Shiny stuff sits. Just push that content to the website, right? You could SCP it, you could copy it that way. For me, I prefer to use git clone, right? So I push the files to a GitHub repository, then log in to the Shiny site, the droplet, and say git clone to pull them down from GitHub. So like it's mentioned here, just to repeat, it does not generate a bundle like RS Connect does. It just needs the raw files. And the only limitation of this Git method is Git doesn't support very large data files. I haven't run into that limitation yet. If I had a large data file, I would want to just SCP it directly into the directory. Now, I mentioned this briefly, like you'll have to work with your name servers. If you already control a domain and you'd simply like to use the domain entirely for the Shiny server, it will not require you to make any major changes. But in my case, as I mentioned, I have the rest of my domain points somewhere else, but shiny.ryanwomack.com points to DigitalOcean, and you just have to edit your address records to reflect that. I'm not going to talk about the method of that. It's also something I would call straightforward, but you have to know about DNS records for that. So the demo project that's hosted there, we've seen that earlier. Hopefully when you watch this video, this will still be up and running. And this hosted site has not given me any trouble so far. It's like set it and forget it kind of thing for the most part, except for those SSL certificate renewals. And again, I feel like this is something that is convenient enough in the long term to be worthwhile. Certainly, it's good to know that this is possible, even if you're hosting things via Shiny apps. It's good to not box yourself into a corner where if I wanted to scale up or wanted to do something that's going to get a lot of hits, or wanted to do something that requires a massive data file, being in control of the process lets you do that. Also would help you understand, if you are lucky enough to be in an organization that is running a Shiny server for the benefit of its population, understand the issues involved. All right, so I think I will stop here. Hopefully this segment, this Run Your Own Shiny Server segment, has given you some flavor of what it's like, what it's involved in setting up a Shiny server, and I thank you for your attention to this point. If you've made it to this point, that's there's no more that I can ask of you, and again, hope that you found this useful. I'll stop here. Thank you.